So last year, in this exact same spot, you can probably find the video early on my channel, I had relatively the same setup, except I didn't have all this wood holding my gardens together. And I actually had 450 square feet of gardening space last year. But it looks like a mess right now because I'm in the middle of building it. Anyway, I laid down 3 strips of landscape fabric, cheap dollar store stuff, and I put layers of grass and leaves and dirt, just kept layering it like that, all the way down each of the 3 lines. And I had the best garden last year, the most output that I've ever had in my whole life, doing that instead of planting in the dirt. So I'm redoing that same method, except I've added, the grass and stuff is already broken down. It's reused from last year, and this was completely full. I refilled it like 4 times, and now I dug it all the way down to the dirt, and that's all out here and over there. I had a horrible problem with weeds last year, growing in the pathways, and you can see my chickens have gotten into it. I put this up to kind of help prevent that. The weeds just overtook it. It was terrible. I couldn't keep it weeded, and I finally just gave up and let them take it over. So all summer and all winter, I've been saving these feed sacks for my rabbits and my chickens and everybody. And then this year I started cutting them down the sides and laying them out. You can kind of see there. You can see it better over here. But I just keep bringing out feed sacks and feed sacks and feed sacks, and I'm tired of cutting them in half, so I didn't realize I had so many, so I've just started laying them out as they are, dye up and everything. So whatever bed goes there, that'll be interesting to see how it does, if that paint on the bags has any impact on it whatsoever. But these 4 beds are all have cardboard under them, and the weeds went right through it like it wasn't even there. So it's probably going to do the same on the bags. So I've still got some weeding. I weeded these 3, and I've still got to weed that one. And these 3 are so new that I've planted in that one, but not in that one. So they don't have anything growing in them yet. But that's the oldest, and it's got weeds. But I've got like lettuce and stuff planted, but I just didn't realize how many feed sacks I was saving up until I started laying them out here. And they cover like a pretty good area. That's all feed sacks. So, but I'm continuing on with my original goal of wrapping these beds around that grape arbor there, all the way back to where the chickens are. And they'll move every year, probably, unless things like what happened last time we moved them happen. We broke one of the wheels completely off that big heavy coop, so it's probably there permanently. But this little one, it just trucks along. But it takes them no time at all to turn it into a dirt run. I mean, I could plant right in that. It's gone. But I planted some corn and stuff along the edges here, because when they do get out, they run along the edges. And I thought maybe it'll give them a snack, keep them away from my gardens. I've got these peas and beans growing right here on this, which also acts as a secondary barrier for my bigger garden. They're growing up nicely. All this used to be covered like up to here with grass and dirt and leaves and stuff, and the chickens just kept spreading it out, and then I'd rake it back up, and then they'd spread it out, and then I'd rake it back up. And this was layered with feed sacks. Can't even tell that they were there. But I figured that all the breaking down on top of this dirt got some good microorganisms action going on under there, so we'll see how these peas and beans do. Looks like something's already eating them for me. It's great. Got onions and basil and chives and all kinds of things growing over here. This was from one of my most recent videos of me cleaning out the chicken coop. I moved it from there to here and just let it continue breaking down the rest of the winter, or part of spring, and planted right in it, and things are going great. So just keep an eye on that. But I don't know. I cut a branch off of my tree and I was going to use some of the branches to build another either rabbit tractor or a chicken tractor to kind of spread them out a little more. But keeping everybody out of these is so hard. Like here, I refilled it in today, but they pulled the netting, I have netting down on top of it, on top of the netting around it, to keep them out of it. And they will find any little hole to slip through and dig in. Like that rake, I threw it over on top of there because they pushed that out of the way and dug right there. Chickens, whew, they taste good, but they're sure a handful. But I'm pretty excited. I left some of those long so that I can just add a board and make it that much deeper again next year. I just kind of thought of that after I'd already built these 4. So those 4 at least might get a little taller. But I've got one more bed to build right there, and then I'll be done with building beds probably for this year. Because I kind of spread things out. Last year, I pretty much just planted right here, directly on top of the ground. But this year, I've got some tomatoes growing. I found some more of these cages in the woods. I took some apart to use as a compost pile for leaves, but I found more. And so I've got one for there, because we don't know if we're going to have to move yet, so why put together my greenhouse for my tomatoes if we might have to move? And then have to take it down for a second time. But someone told me that they plant their tomatoes deeper and then fill in the hole as they grow. So I'm going to try that with direct sow and with pre-grown in pots. They're both, they've got dirt standing ready to bury them more as they grow. And I'll just keep pruning them and burying them. But I've still got some in pots that I'll plant probably elsewhere. Here I've got melons and squash and stuff. Those used to be mounds, but the chickens dug them up. So, whatever. But that'll help me kind of centralize the water. Last year I grew watermelon and cantaloupe in my compost pile, and they just didn't do very well. The cantaloupe tasted washed out, and the watermelon just didn't get very big. But they were tasty. I've marked all my strawberries with these signs that I built last year because I just couldn't find them because this gets so overgrown. But this year, instead of keeping the rabbits in the barn all summer and keeping a fan on them, I'm going to keep them in their cages outside and move them around where I'm growing things to kind of keep the weeds down. Because I planted things just a little too close together to use my riding lawnmower or my scythe, and I don't like operating a weed eater. So I'll just move my rabbits around in here and call it good. There's a tiny one with some flowers on it. Looks like we might get strawberries this year. They've all got flowers. But it's funny. Ever since I started gardening, I was like a child. But ever since I started gardening, I would plan out whenever I would water, and I would water for like 30 minutes to an hour, like once a week, to kind of try to get the roots to grow down deeper. But every single time I do that, it rains. And so yesterday I had my sprinkler out, and I was watering, and it was about 45 minutes in, and it starts pouring buckets. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll let nature do it for me as usual. It always waits until I'm ready to water. So I don't know if I posted a video, I'll have to check. The neighbor said that he had a sick goat. It had scours, which is like chronic diarrhea. And I went to Successful Goating with Rosie on Facebook, and she helped me tremendously getting this little girl back in shape. I've got her locked in here because she's a Houdini. She sometimes stays inside with me with a diaper. That's Sally. And she's a diva. Whoop! And much better now. She had diarrhea all down the back of her legs, and I built a temporary pen out of these cow panels, and she walks through them like they're not even there. Then I wrapped it in bird netting, and she still got out, and I tried everything to keep her in, and she just wouldn't stay in. She stays on my property when she does get out and just kind of mills around and munches on stuff, but I have to keep an eye on her because she'll even get out of this with all these heavy boards. She has like 3 times. But I gave her all kinds of drugs. I gave her like Scour Stop for pigs, and I gave her vitamin B12 complex shot, which was my second shot on a goat that I've ever given, and it was a baby, so that was really stressful because the needle looked like it would go all the way through her whole neck. But we finally got her fixed up. We thought she might have coccidiosis, so we treated her for that. We gave her some probiotics. I force-fed her some milk and some Pedialyte to keep her hydrated because she was just non-stop diarrhea. But she fought me on the milk thing. I mean, I tried it every which way. I tried it in a bottle. She chewed up the nipple. She kept fighting me like she didn't want to drink it. I was feeding her whole cow's milk from a suggestion from one of my friends. They said don't waste your money on that milk supplement for goats. But anyways, finally I just quit. I quit giving it to her. We don't know how old she is. We don't know who her owners are. We don't even begin to know where to find her. But she was so emaciated and so sick when we found her, I kind of don't even want to find the owner. Because since she's come here, she gained probably 2 or 3 pounds her first week, and she just keeps going up. Her little horns are growing. But she's a boar goat, probably. But she acts like a grown-up, like all my other goats. She doesn't really play that much or anything. But she went straight from having diarrhea to having constipation. And so I had to help her out with that. Usually one of the major things that causes constipation in goats is dehydration. So I just forced some more Pedialyte on her, and I make sure and keep water just around. Like I've got a bucket over there, I've got a bucket in there with her. I've just got buckets around so that she can always have a drink when she's out here with me, so she didn't get constipated again. But I was so thrilled. It took about 5 days for her to get better. I was so thrilled to see that first solid poop. It was the first poop I ever took a picture of. That's how happy I was to see that she was going to make it. Because I honestly thought she was going to die. I had no idea what was wrong with her. So I got to take care of my first baby and my first sick goat all at the same time. But she's a pretty good little goat. When she's inside with me, I have a gold leaf antique chair from like the 50s or 60s, and she sits up in there with her diaper. I've got photographs I'll probably put in the video. Yes, is that yummy, Sally? Whoever owned her before had dogs most certainly and let the goat eat dog food, which is really bad. I don't remember the name of the disease that they can get, but they can get some kind of disease from eating dog food. And when I bring her inside, the first thing she goes for is the dog food, so I have to snatch it up and put it away. Because she will buck me when I feed her grain or hay or anything, but when she sees that dog food, oh goodness. So my assumption is they were feeding her dog food like their dog. But they're not canines, they're vegetarians. So... Oh, and also, the very first day, she saw my dog and screamed bloody murder, like, oh, it's my friend. But whenever she's with these goats, she acts like they're the devil. Of course, they act like she's the devil. Sophie's tried to horn her guts a few times. But I figure when she's like 30, 40, 50 pounds, when she can no longer fit through the cattle panels, I've been kind of introducing her to my other goats occasionally. They're usually pretty mean. Because I have to establish that dominance, you know, make sure that Queen Sophie stays Queen Sophie. But I've read and watched videos of horror stories where people introduce goats suddenly and unexpectedly to their goats and they end up killing them. So I'm just slowly doing it. As you remember, I had a rabbit area in my barn. That's where she sleeps. Otherwise, she stays away from them. because there's 2 slots in the thing where she can poke her head through and sniff them, and they can sniff each other, but she's safe from their horns. And that's usually where she likes to stay. Ooh, yummy grass. But until I get everything set up the way I want and like build a bigger, more Sally-proof pen, I have to keep her in that playpen. And I keep the boards on there to keep her in and to keep the sun off her. Got okra planted here. That's where I had my rabbits one day. They cut out a perfect rectangle. I've also got okra planted over here. We actually tilled this up and I covered it in leaves, and see how good that did. Things do not have a problem growing in this state. So I've been moving my rabbits around on it to kind of keep it down. But like my herbs and stuff, I don't know. I have herbs planted in here, and I mean, it starts off like this, just a carpet of green, and if you don't get right on it, it just takes over in no time, and that's what happened. But I've got, most of the things in here are pretty tall things that I'm not concerned about, like at least 2 or 3 feet, except right here, there's this thin patch. You can kind of make out the edges. That's where the radishes are growing. There's some radishes already. But I am only growing them for the animals. So like I've got corn in here, but I also have corn along the edge of my gardens, and I've got corn along the chicken pen, and so I'll have plenty of corn. So mainly this area I'm not really taking care of it because I'm only planting things that I'm going to feed the animals. Like I mix a lot of black oil sunflower seeds with my goat feed because it provides like vitamin A and selenium and a bunch of stuff they need. So I just threw down a couple of handfuls from their feed bag, and they're growing, so that's just more that I don't have to buy. And then right behind it, you can see I've got corn growing. There's some corn, there's some corn, there's some more corn. So, also, this will serve as like a deterrent. Ever since we got our buck, these fences are no match. I put this fence together as sturdy as I thought to know how, and they push it apart. Like this used to be on the other side of here. But they rub along here and push all these pins loose, and then eventually they break it apart. I've gone through, they used to have like 3-4 pins on each one, but I've gone through and done every single bar all the way down to kind of give it some more support. But they just push it apart, and occasionally I'll find a goat out, and I have to put them back. I think that's a tomato. Possibly. I think I planted tomatoes over here when the chickens were babies, but I didn't think any of them would come back. But if they do get out, they won't go running for my garden. They'll have to stop here and munch on whatever's growing right here. But like, you can kind of tell here, Bernie, the boy, the buck, he reaches his head through, and as far as he can reach is missing. So it's like tall here and short over there, all the way around. He even gets, I cut a hole through the fence to allow them easier access to their hay because Sugar, Sophie, and Susie kept getting their heads stuck in these bars as they reached through to get hay. And so I cut this hole, and I should have left, just cut out one cross section and left a bar, but I didn't. So Bernie, he can actually crawl in here, and then he sticks his head out through here and eats the grass on the outside here as well. Anything he can reach. I guess he can't reach that too well. So he's got a perfect line there. But I planted some wild coffee weed around the entire perimeter of the goat area. It's a natural laxative and it's edible to everyone. So That might help with something, who knows. But I put these up around the rabbits whenever there's a storm. I usually pile them all together and wrap them in metal and put like the roofs at angles away. Like this is the center of the safe room, and then they have angles off the sides where the other cages are. Just keeps them kind of dry and safe from storms and wind. But the reason I'm spreading out so much this year is because of my Japanese beetle outbreak. It was so awful. It nearly took everything I had. All of my trees suffered. One of my blueberries died. I've got pumpkins planted where it was. Just everything. The strawberries, most of them died. I think we bought like 25 plants and we've got 6 left. So I've got my traps out early. Ricky did some research and found out that they have these scouters that go out and find a good food spot and then return and bring the whole hive. So I've got a few traps out to prevent that from happening, so they can't return. So hopefully that'll keep them away. And I'm spreading my gardens out all over the place so that they can't find it all if they do, because they moved from my orchard. Once they decimated it, they moved straight over here to my garden last year and started working on it. Now thankfully it had a bunch of wild weeds and stuff growing in it, so they ate a lot of weeds and a lot less of my stuff, thankfully. It could have been a lot worse, but they did still eat up my radishes and stuff. So it seems like everything is trying to get your stuff on the homestead. Predators are always after your animals, and bugs are always after your plants. We went on a short 2-day vacation to a friend of ours for Easter, and I set up everybody in their buildings with food and water. I spread the chickens out between the 2 coops, even though they prefer the smaller coop. I had all my rabbits in storm position, as I was just describing, just in case that happened while we were gone. And they dug through the chicken wire floor. I put that there to keep them from digging out. When I built it, in one of my previous videos you can find, I built a a rabbit tractor. They dug through and 4 got out. I found 1 corpse. I still have not found the other rabbit, and I found 2. One was in the goat area and one was hidden in between the cages. And there was a dog, the neighbor's dog, had a collar on. And he was at our doorstep when we got home, and he was all, happy and shaking his tail like, oh, you're finally home. He was trying to come in our house, and I was like, no, you need to get out here. And he wouldn't leave. He stayed all night and all the next morning. And I finally had to chase him off, beating sticks on things, making loud noise and screaming at him, and got him to run off. But because I noticed he was following me around while I did my morning chores the next morning. And when I got to the rabbits, he was looking at them like, oh yes, give me a snack, please give me one. And I was like, it was you who ate these rabbits. So I got -2 rabbits again. I couldn't bring myself to kill them, so I've just been keeping them as like grass control for hard to get through areas and fertilization. I feed them grass, they feed the grass poop, they feed my garden's poop, so it all works out. But I don't want animals coming and taking them from me still. Sally's moved a little bit. But he hasn't come back since I chased him off. I hope he doesn't ever.